Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. The suggestions past the developers for June of 2024 came out, and one of the vehicles that at least I've covered previously and looking forward to in the future has been passed. This is the BAE Systems Nimrod MRA4. The article itself was written by Avro Vulcan XH558, and I wanted to give it its own video because it's a fantastic article and also just a really interesting, design, but mainly it's an interesting story and shows another part of where the British aviation industry since the 60s. As an extra thing as well, I will be going on vacation for a few days, basically from Monday to Thursday. So if you message me or send me anything, I'm not going to see it until Friday. And yeah, just going to go lay on a beach for a bit, basically reset the brain, and hopefully you guys have a good week. And I still have some content coming out, but just understand if there's any news items, I'll have to cover them later in the week. For Britain, we have the Nimrod MRA4, which was created by BAE Systems. The MRA4 was an upgrade to the MR2 that was cancelled during the test phase and has been mired in controversy since. The cancellation of the program also coincided with the end of the MR2 service life, and thus the end of the Nimrod itself. The MR2 itself was a workhorse of the RAF, flying every day at day or night or in bad weather conditions, in order to make sure that the maritime boundaries of the UK were not being compromised, that vessels were obeying UK laws, conducting SAR operations, and most importantly, keeping track of prowling Soviet submarines in the North Sea and Atlantic. Their importance to UK national safety was paramount. Submarines were not only a threat to shipping, but also a threat to civilization in general. A single submarine could carry numerous missiles, each of which could bring Armageddon to all of humanity. Hundreds of such types of submarines were in service with the Soviet Navy. Even with the collapse of the Iron Curtain and the Soviet Union, the job of the Nimrod was not over, with ex-Soviet diesel-electric submarines being proliferated around the globe. The mighty Hunter, as the Nimrod was known, a name well-deserved, prowled over the ocean, with the safety of civilization on its shoulders, a burden shared by all ASW types. However, by now, the MR2 began to show its age, and it was necessary for a new type to replace it. Design studies had been ongoing since the 70s, as the MR1 was deemed only a temporary solution. Many studies were conducted, including ones based off of BAC 1-11 and the VC-10. However, it was decided to stick with the Nimrod and upgrade it to the MR2 standard. By the late 80s, it was deemed necessary to begin drawing up a replacement for the MR2 that could enter service by the early 2000s, when the MR2 was expected to reach the end of its service life. So in the period between 1989 and 93, numerous design studies were conducted to find the ideal replacement for the Nimrod. These studies were wide-ranging, with dedicated new build ASW aircraft powered by a wide variety of engines, ranging from turboprops to turbofans and prop fans, as well as conversions of airliners and transport aircraft. The latter had already been successful, with the Nimrod itself being a conversion of the Comet 4, and in other countries too, the P-3 Orion being a conversion of the L-188 Electra, and the IL-38 being a conversion of the IL-18 airliner. Other options were proposed, such as numerous modernized variants of the P-3 Orion, including the P-7, and the Breguet Atlantique 3. Both of these options were dismissed by the air staff, as it was believed that a legacy turboprop aircraft would be a step backwards for the RAF, which had operated the jet-powered Nimrod successfully for nearly 30 years at this point. The conversion of airliners was considered to be a non-starter, as the air staff required 4 engines, and all modern airliners of the size and weight class necessary were twin-engined. A completely new aircraft, though the best option, was the one that was most risky and also expensive. The best solution came in the form of the BAE Woodford Femur, which would eventually evolve into the A400M Atlas after a long gestation period. However, it wouldn't be for another 2 decades that this would enter service, so it was chosen to upgrade the Nimrod. At the time, it was seen as a great idea, since the Nimrod and Comet before it had long been familiar to BAE and the RAF, at least in theory. The MRA4 was essentially a complete rebuild of the MR2, with new wings, engines, engine nacelles, and also avionics. The flight deck was completely brand new, with the latest technology, with the original cockpit being replaced by a glass cockpit. The observers getting new displays with new ASW equipment. Parts of the tail had to be modified and strengthened in order to deal with their new avionics and with the changed aerodynamics that the new engines brought. The entire fuselage was relifted in order to extend its service life. With such a huge redesign of the aircraft, there were obviously going to be some problems. Originally, the Nimrod 2000, as the MRA4 was then known, was intended to be an upgrade. Re-engineing and also refurbishment of the Nimrod MR2. Originally, Flight Refueling Limited was to carry out the refurbishment. However, on inspection, it was found that the airframes were not built to a common standard, and BAE took over their work, and the airframes were moved to Woodford. These differences occurred because the original Comet airframes, which the Nimrod was based on, were hand-built, and were each different in certain ways. Additionally, the jigs which were used to build the Nimrod MR1s, the airframe specifically, had been stored outside for decades, and were beyond usable at that point. There are also multiple flaws found in the wing, so these had to be completely rebuilt, although the original wing design was kept. A new fly-by-wire system had to be developed for the aircraft, which itself brought numerous development problems. Costs mounted as delays increased, while the order was constantly reduced, making the program less sustainable. The original order was reduced in 18 in 2002, 16 in 2004, and then 12 in 2006, and ultimately 9 in 2008. It was as if the situation for the MRA4 couldn't get any worse, but it did. Though the MRA4 was never involved in any accidents or incidents, its predecessor, the MR12, was subject to intense scrutiny in the last 5 years of its service. There were 2 incidents that revealed certain flaws within the design that would plague the MRA4 program until its dying day. Since the aircraft was a conversion of older models, it inherited many of its flaws. These would have been fixed, adding further cost. XW666 was a Nimrod R1, a signals intelligence variant of the Nimrod. On the 16th of May, 1995, the aircraft was flying over the Moray Firth after some routine maintenance, when the No. 4 engine suffered a catastrophic engine failure. This caused a turbine blade to puncture one of the fuel tanks, causing a major engine fire that threatened to burn through the wing. Flight Lieutenant Art Stacey managed to ditch the aircraft in the Moray Firth, with his skills allowing the aircraft to safely come down, with all 7 crew members surviving, being picked up by a Sea King from the RAF Lossiemouth. The subsequent Board of Inquiry suggested various improvements to the entire fleet, mainly the fitting out of equipment and also structure reduced the risk posed by fire and also catastrophic engine failure. However, these were not undertaken. The XV-230 was conducting a routine surveillance mission on the 6th of September, when a fire broke out on the aircraft after mid-air refueling. The aircraft succumbed to the flames and exploded, taking with it the lives of 12 RAF personnel, a Royal Marine, and also a British Army soldier. The crash was the biggest loss of service personnel in combat since the Falklands War. An investigation and also subsequent inquiry revealed damning evidence of design flaws and also safety breaches spanning 40 years. The coroner's report stated that the Nimrod was not airworthy and had not been since the IFR probes were fitted in the 80s. An independent review under Charles Haddon Cave, QC, was highly critical of those involved in the Nimrod program and revealed numerous faults, 3 of which in particular being, number 1, a crossfeed duct installed in the original MR1 build that fed air from the APU to the engines was found to be a major source of ignition. Number 2, the MR2 upgrade added a supplementary air conditioning pack which increased potential for ignition. And then 3, the post-Falklands installation of the in-flight refueling probe, which greatly increased the risk of an uncontained escape of fuel. The report was also critical of the Nimrod safety case. A safety case is basically a structured argument that is supported by evidence. That is a system that as a system is able to function safely in a given environment. Haddon Cave was also critical of how the RAF and MOD had handled legacy aircraft, as funds had not been properly allocated for the proper maintenance and inspection of these aircraft, essentially stating that penny pinching was put above the safety of the personnel. Finally, he was also critical about the RAF and MOD not holding up their part of the military covenant. The military covenant is essentially an informal agreement whereby the armed services provide for the needs of personnel and they are addressed. Though having no basis whatsoever in British law, the military covenant has acquired pseudo-legal status in the years following 2001. This damning report clearly showed that the writing was on the wall for the Nimrod. So with mounting delays, an economic crisis, and safety concerns regarding the fleet, the MRA4 was cancelled in the 2010 Defence Review, and the airframes cut up for scrap. The programme had been a controversial topic pretty much then and also ever since, and has been the source for numerous arguments and debates ever since. The aircraft itself and those who worked on it were not and are not to blame for the failure of the programme. It was the procurement system in which it was ordered. The aircraft failed because the procurement process failed. The aircraft should not have been built in the first place. It was going to be riddled with flaws, delays and problems from the outset, and an effort to save money by using what was in place turned out to be another case of billions of pounds being flushed down the toilet for want of a better reason. In essence, the project was dead before its conception. Those who worked on the program did it as best as they could to rectify the issues and work with what they had. The Nimrod MR2 fleet was also retired, with some being preserved, with the rest meeting the same fate as their MRA4 cousins, the blowtorch and the cutter of the scrap. The mighty Hunter had been laid to rest. This vehicle has access to 4 Rolls-Royce BR710 engines. It can go at a decent click, but the main interesting thing about this is even though it is a huge vehicle and designed for more ASW roles, it could get access to AIM-9L Sidewinders, ASRAMs, the Storm Shadow, the Harpoon, the Alarm, Stingray torpedoes, dumb bombs, and also paveways, showing that it could get some pretty fun weaponry. It would be lovely to see this thing in the game at some point, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.